And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Boss Lady Dream Builders. Boss Lady Chronicles. No, she built it. Boss Lady Dream Builders is actually the the Facebook group. This is She Built It, Boss Lady Chronicles. I'm a little nervous tonight because I am interviewing my longtime friend. For those of us who really, those of you among us who really know the two of us, we go way, way, way back, like
Mhm.
freaking frack. The dynamic duo is back together again on live. And so I'm really excited about tonight's guest and about this conversation that we're preparing to have. So I'm just going to give a couple of minutes for people to log on, and then I will introduce our guest. In the meantime, I just want to invite you, for any lady who is interested in discovering the more that is inside of you in community, I encourage you to join Boss Lady Dream Builders. It's a personal development community where we tap into the things that are inside of us that will give us the power to live out our dreams. I started this group because it just grieves me some that there's so many women who never achieve their goals, that die with their dreams inside of them. And so it's my mission to have as many women as possible actually live out their dreams. And women doing incredible things is always amazing. So, Boss Lady Dream Builders, check us out on Facebook. So now it is my pleasure to introduce my friend. It says Wanda Man, but I always feel like I need to say Wanda Y Man.
Ah,
So,
the
Wanda
middle
Wine
initial, yes.
has been writing about wine for over a decade. She is the East Coast editor for the SOMM Journal and Tasting Panel magazines. Wanda's writing has also been published in Food and Wine, Napa Magazine, and other publications. She has visited major wine regions and interviewed top winemakers, many of whom have joined Wanda for lively chats and virtual tastings on Instagram Live. Wanda's love of wine was kickstarted by her professional chef father and the 2 years she spent studying in Spain. An in demand speaker and wine presenter, Wanda has been featured at the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen, the Women in Wine Leadership Symposium, the Charleston Wine and Food Festival, and the Nantucket Food and Wine Festival. Wanda is the immediate past president of Les Dames d'Escoffier, New York, a nonprofit organization that provides scholarships to women pursuing careers in food, wine, and spirits, and hospitality. She also serves on the board of the Society of Wine Educators. Welcome, Wanda Wyman.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome. And the Y is for Yvette, in case anyone is curious.
But it was always part of it. It's like Wanda,
It
man,
was.
I
It
can't
was.
leave the Y off. But anyway, welcome to She Built It, Boss Lady Chronicles. I invited you because you are, in my mind, the quintessential boss lady. Because again, we go way back. And I'm going to start, I guess I'll ask some questions and then maybe I'll
Sure.
interject some things. But the first question I like to ask is whether or not you were born a boss or did you have to develop your boss lady persona?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was probably born into it. I come from a family of strong Southern women. And I know as a child, I remember having tea parties with my friends. I was like, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's done. So I've always had kind of that, like, I like things done a certain way. I like following my own path. So I think because of the role models I had around me, that was a very comfortable, I didn't know any other way of being.
Okay.
Um,
Well, Wanda and I have known each other since high school. And so what I tell her is that she has always been a nonconformist. So, you know how some people, when they're in high school, they're very much influenced by the people around them and, what people think and, in terms of what they should wear and how they should carry themselves and what they should like and not like. And Wanda has always written her own story, marched to the tune of her own drum. And so I wonder, Wanda, what gave you the courage to do that? Because again, high school is such a time of
mm,
high pressure, for peer pressure and all of those things. So what gave you the confidence to just be you?
wow. Sometimes when you're young, also, you just don't think things through, right?
Yes.
So, high school, I'm not going to say it was always easy. I mean, you definitely know there were those awkward moments and times. And I think every teenager goes through that. But I did kind of realize that, you're not going to fit into every group. So it's like, I just have to be true to myself. So, for example, being a part of a rock band, it's like, why is she doing that? But it felt right for me. So I think I just learned early on, like, yes, there are moments where maybe you want to fit in, but you kind of lose yourself if you try to force yourself to fit somewhere that you don't or doesn't feel natural. And I think when you live authentically, people see that. So I think, again, there were moments where I'm like, oh, life would be easier, if I were good at math and was popular and played sports. But that was never really that really wasn't my lane. And I guess I just grew comfortable with that and never really thought about it.
Okay. All right. Now, fast forwarding a little bit, the bio that we read or that I read was more like present day.
Hmm.
But again, because Wanda and I have known each other so long, I know more of her history. And as I was saying to you off camera, you became an entrepreneur before entrepreneurship was in vogue. And so again, what gave you the courage to live outside of the box?
Yeah, I think part of it was, honestly, I don't like people bossing me around. So I was very fortunate. My first job when I graduated from college, you may remember, was with the Girl
I
Scouts.
do.
And that was a great job. I was there for 2 years. I was surrounded by all these women who were probably more around my mom's age and older. And they were very nurturing and supportive. And even though my job description was one thing, I had a boss, Kim, if you're watching, who really encouraged me to get involved in everything. And yeah, try it. You can do it. So when I left after 2 years and came back home to New York, not knowing what I was going to do, I quickly discovered when I would take a traditional job, for the first week, I loved it. I felt like a guest star on like a soap opera. Like, oh, I can play this role for a week. And after a couple of months, I would get restless, office politics, um, people not sharing the same vision.
Sure.
And so, I started finding ways to freelance and do, and I wasn't even using the word entrepreneur. And I really didn't even know about being a consultant, about freelancing. People weren't talking about it as much,
Right.
let's say late 90s. I probably is
Yeah.
the first time I started consulting and being a freelance, or gig economy we talk about now. So the freedom of that, I said, okay, two things happened. When I became a consultant, people were hiring me because they recognized my expertise and wanted me to be the leader.
Yes.
So it eliminated some of that stress of being in a traditional office environment where, maybe you're the lower person on the totem pole and you kind of have to, sit there and take it. So I like being able to hone in on the things that I felt I excelled at, but also I got to learn from some really incredible people, working with the Arthur Ashe Institute for Urban Health, which was probably one of my first freelance clients. I ended up working with them more or less for 20 years, starting off as an assistant and then becoming the executive producer of their gala. And through that, being in the boardrooms of major CEOs, because they served on the board of the Institute. The Institute had an incredible woman leader. So I was able, in many ways, I regretted not going to grad school, but I felt that my freelance career kind of gave me that experience. I took lessons from each of those organizations that I worked with.
Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So if
Yeah.
you had gone to, just this is a little bit random, if you had
Mhm.
gone to grad school, what would you have studied?
Well, I don't know if you remember this. I had actually applied and I did get in. I'm not going to name the school, but at that time I was really into Spanish. You may recall, still am.
Yes. Yes.
So I was going to get a master's degree in Spanish linguistics.
Ah, okay.
But then I thought, what am I going to do with that? I don't want to be a professor. Like, what's the career path, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up not going back east to go to grad school, and I stayed in California after graduation to work with the Girl Scouts.
Okay. So I know you've pivoted a number of times. So you kind of alluded to this a little
Yeah.
bit. just because you mentioned, working for the Girl Scouts. You also mentioned Arthur Ashe. Um, how has that pivoting, that the ability to pivot, what again, what gives you that courage, that to say, okay, this isn't working, let's try this other thing? Because again, our parents generation, I'll
Yeah.
talk about my mom for instance. My mom had the same job for 43 years.
Wow.
She got the job, she kept the job, the end of the story. And that's, our kind of our generation. Some people have been that way. Now the
Mhm.
generation under us, very different. They
True.
don't,
Very true.
they just keep moving, they stay in motion and momentum. And once it's not fitting them, it's not aligning with their priorities and their values and their goals, they move on. So for you, what has told you when it's time to pivot, and how has pivoting given you, kind of expanded your reach, so to speak?
I always felt it was time to pivot when I'm a big Seinfeld fan, and one of my favorite quotes is George Costanza, gotta leave on a high note, right? When I feel like I had accomplished everything I could do there and I left it better than what it was when I found it. So I met my goals and the client was happy. When I get too comfortable, when it becomes too routine, even if I'm doing well at it and everyone's happy, it's usually a sign for me that I'm playing it safe and I need the next challenge. I didn't realize this until recently. I like things that scare me a little bit. I like
Mm,
pushing myself.
okay.
And I've learned often someone will come to me, like when I pivoted, often it wasn't like an intentional plan that I'm going to do this now. That's why I always tell people it's so important to nurture relationships.
Yes.
Because so often it would be someone who knew me from another project reaching out to me, and I would think to myself, am I ready to do that? I would feel scared and I would doubt myself. But I was like, you know what? They see something that maybe I don't. So I'm going to step up to the plate. So I feel it's been a series of those decisions for me. And also I think because of my father being a chef, he was very much, I remember him having so many different jobs when I was growing up at different restaurants. My grandmother being a singer and then leaving that life. So I think it was comfortable for me. I had those role models around me. It's like, oh, try the next thing. It's okay.
Wow, I think you hit on a really good point about, doing things that scare you a little bit,
Hmm.
that push you outside of your comfort zone, because I think that is one of the big things that causes growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious, how do we go from planning events, working for Girl Scouts, planning events, to wine?
Good
How did we
question.
get to wine?
Well, it's funny. I think sometimes when we look back, we see certain moments in our life that were maybe building up to it and we didn't realize it, right?
Yeah.
So my dad bought me my first bottle of wine when I was 16.
Okay.
And then going to Spain and wine being a part of the meal and getting used to it as a cultural experience. But then my work as an events planner, one of the days I always looked forward to was choosing the menu for the events,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, oh, this is fascinating. But it was really when I was the events director at the Princeton Club. I was there for about 4 years. I planned all of the wine and spirits tastings, and they were the best way to get members in the door because no brainer. People love trying new wines. It was social. So, and my boss was happy. The events would sell out. So, through that, I started meeting people in the industry and I was invited to an event on a day off. And it was my first time not being the behind the scenes person, but
Uh,
sitting at a table with the winemaker. And I realized I don't know anything about wine. Like
mm.
he talked about these grapes like they were his children, and the barrels and the soil and the terroir. So the writer in me became really fascinated, so I just started going to classes and geeking out and tastings and buying books. And at that time, I was already kind of a social media entrepreneur. I was probably one of the early bloggers. Like I started my first blog in 99, maybe.
And was that the Black Dress Traveler?
Oh, I've had so many. That
Was
was
that this
Man
one?
About
Okay.
Town. Yes,
Okay.
Man.
Oh, that's right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to write about looking for the perfect little black dress anymore or, where to go see a great show. There are so many stories and wine. So I really came to it from that angle. As a writer, I was really fascinated by all of the stories. And I never thought it would be more than a hobby. It was just kind of my thing, but it really seemed to resonate with my readers because I think a lot of them were at the same stage. We were at a point in our careers where we're making a little bit of money, we're going out to social events. You want to know something other than Chardonnay, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I was learning, I was sharing. And it's been, I don't know, I've kind of lost count now. It's definitely over a decade, somewhere between a decade and 15 years. So that now I get paid to do this and to teach seminars and to write. It really, I'd be lying if I said there was a strategic plan,
Okay.
but I just threw myself in because I really loved it. So,
So what's next? Is this where we're settling? Because you said over a decade now.
yeah.
So are we settling here in wine, or do you foresee another pivot at some point?
That's a good question. One of the things I really love about wine that even the masters of wine will tell you they don't know everything. There's so much to learn that I really feel this is something I could do for the rest of my life because I'm always learning something new, traveling to new places, new grapes being discovered, new trends happening. Um, and the audience for wine is growing, from what I've seen. Some of the statistics say buying is down, but just here in New York, when I see the number of wine bars, number of people now who want to have conversations about wine. So I could see myself here for a while, maybe transitioning. Writing is my first love, but I've discovered I really love the in person events. So I would love to do more of that. And I just recently signed with the literary agent. So that book I've been talking about for decades will probably be a wine focused book. So yeah, so we'll see. But I think this is a good path for me for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned a lot of travel, and I know that you travel internationally and nationally,
Yeah.
and in the country a fair amount for wine. What's your favorite place that you've traveled?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But again, Spain will always be my first love because that's the first place I went overseas and, it was my home for 2 years studying there. But Italy has been such an important part of my wine education. So when I first started writing about wine, the first press trip I took as a wine professional was to Italy. And I've been invited back so many times and I've learned so much from Italy that I've been able to apply to other places. So, and again, when you're talking about Italy, you're talking about 20 different regions.
Yeah.
So, I've been to maybe 13 of them. I would love to visit all 20. But yes, so whether you're talking about Tuscany or Sicily or Sardinia, I would say Italy is a place I feel very at home, very comfortable. Even though they talk to me in Italian and I answer in Spanish, I'm still trying to learn Italian. But we get along. So yes, I would say Italy is a top one.
Okay, and then what's your favorite wine?
That's a tough one. That's something I get asked a lot because wine is so intertwined with memory, who you're
Mm,
with, what you're eating, what you're doing. You often hear about people who go on vacation and they're sitting on a balcony and they're watching the sunset and they're drinking this wine. It's the best wine ever. And then they come back home and they get that wine and like, oh, it doesn't taste the same. Something's wrong.
yeah,
No, because you're not
it's
on
the experience.
vacation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it really depends. Always the beauty about wine, I always encourage people to just get out of your comfort zone because there's so many different wines. So I love sparkling wines, but there's a whole world of sparkling wine beyond champagne. So we can talk about, of course, everyone knows Prosecco, but what about Cava? What about Trento Doc? What about it just goes on and on. So I pretty much I can't think of a wine that I hate,
Okay,
but it really depends on the mood and the moment. So
okay.
I really can't name a single favorite.
Okay. All right. So I want to shift gears a little bit just because again, I know the backstory. And so I know a lot of the projects that you've worked on have been almost like social justice
Yeah.
kinds of projects. And so tell me a little bit about how that kind of weaves into your entrepreneurship and the fact that you were able to, did these projects find you or did you choose these projects that had so much meaning?
Yeah, I would say most of them found me. I think, definitely helped, the first job being with the Girl Scouts, a very recognized nonprofit, you know, that opened doors. And then again, the networking. So when I was at the Ford Foundation as a consultant, they came through one of our fellow classmates from college who was a director at Ford. They said, "Oh, I know you're an event planner. Maybe you would be available." And he set up
Ah,
some meetings. And so what turned into one event I thought would be a one-time deal, I ended up consulting at Ford for 4 or 5 years off and on, working on huge projects. I worked on the first TEDx talk at a maximum security prison in California. Yeah, so working on events with world leaders and dignitaries. I mean, it was fascinating. So it really kind of, once you're kind of in that world, it really is a word of mouth. So
hmm.
I can't think of a project, especially for it being such a prestigious
Sure.
foundation, that opened a lot of doors. But also, you have to do the work to back it up, right? It could have been a one and done,
Right.
but I took the work very seriously. I enjoyed it. I still occasionally work with some nonprofits because those issues matter to me, social justice issues. So whether we're talking about when I worked for the Arthur Ashe Institute for Urban Health during their annual gala, addressing racial disparities in health, that was their primary mission. At the Aspen Institute, working on criminal justice reform. At Ford, we covered a wide variety of topics. And again, I would say I'm not the thought leader on these things, but
Sure.
it is a sense of satisfaction being behind the scenes to make sure that when those experts and thought leaders come, that they're in the right venue, that their message is getting across, that it's a comfortable, conversation. So you feel that you're giving back in some way. And that's important because wine can feel like a very rarefied world, and it
Mhm.
often is. So I still like to maintain that connection to those issues.
So, are you reliving your dream life?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, when I was a little girl, I dreamed of a lot of things. Some of them have come true, right? I always wanted to
Yeah.
travel a lot. I always wanted to be a published writer. So the book is not done yet, but to see your name in a magazine with the
I was gonna
byline
say
is
you
great.
published a number of articles
So a
though.
lot of articles in magazines, wanting to be on television. I've done that a few times. So there's still
Commercial.
more.
You did a commercial.
Yep, I did a commercial.
Yeah.
So there's still more I want to do. And I'm not saying it's always easy. I think something I'm very aware of because of social media, I think everyone feels this pressure that they
Yeah.
have to be perfect and happy all the time. And this fear of missing out or this compare and despair that happens because of social media. And part of me is very grateful that when I started this, social media wasn't as prevalent.
Yeah.
So I think it's very healthy sometimes, A, to take time out from all of that and just focus on the essence of what brings you the joy. So, for example, for me to open a bottle of wine and not take a picture and post it, just enjoy the wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you don't have to post a picture of every experience. Um, so I'd like to be able to when I talk to young people who ask for advice, that's something I often tell them. Like, I know social media is a valuable tool. It's definitely grown my business, but it doesn't define you, and it's only part of anyone's story. So don't look at someone else and think, oh, they have it all figured out. Their life is perfect, because people are, for the most part, are only sharing the things
The
that seem
highlights. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, but you're absolutely right. People are only sharing their highlight reel, and you're comparing that to your everyday life, and that's
Hmm.
certainly not the thing to do, or it doesn't make you more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And and honestly, everybody is on their own path.
Exactly.
And it's what your all is. That's what I tell people all the time. It's not about people talk about having it all, but
Mhm.
really it's about you defining your all,
Exactly.
and doing the things that bring you joy and that speak to you. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I see you doing that in so many different areas. Tell us a little bit about your hobbies. What are your hobbies?
I still love karaoke. If I had time to start another rock band, I'd love to do that. I have to say, I do miss a lot of my life does revolve around wine, which is great. So my hobbies outside of wine, I do listen to a lot of music and I sing in my house, but I would love to maybe find a way to perform a little bit again. Writing is my job, but it is also a hobby. And I try to maintain that because sometimes when you're writing on assignment, you kind of lose. Someone said the quickest way to stop loving something is to get paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to still keep writing in my life as something that's my thing. Other hobbies, I love cooking, you know, uh, trying new, spices and foods and going out to eat. So my hobbies probably aren't that exciting. I mean, I'm not really. I tried to be crafty. It didn't work out for me. Like I tried some needlepoint stuff. It's not for me. I don't have the skill set. I bought a ukulele.
Oh,
Not
wow.
for me. I've been playing the same 10 chords on my guitar since high school. I still love the guitar, but I realize I'm never going to be a virtuoso. So for me, it's a lot about music, food, flavor, travel. Those tend to be my hobbies.
Very good. So tell us, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to follow you, how do they do that?
On Instagram, and I don't use X any too much, but both handles are Wine Dine Wanda. And my website is winewithwanda.com. And I'm also on Facebook as Wine with Wanda.
Okay. Do you have any upcoming events or anything like that you want to share with us?
Yeah, if anyone is traveling, no, it's interesting to see. I definitely see more people traveling now with wine as part of the agenda. So I'll be presenting in Nantucket in May at their wine and food festival. And then in June, I'll be in Aspen. I'll be doing 2 seminars there. I'll be in Charleston in a few couple of weeks.
Okay.
Early March, I'm doing a few seminars in Charleston. So yeah, if you go to my website, you'll see those events listed.
Okay. So who has been the most influential person in your journey thus
Ooh,
far?
it's always hard to narrow it to one because it really does take a village, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But when I look at what I'm doing now related to wine, I would have to say my father, because I always said food was our love language in a lot of
Yes.
ways. And again, him, exposing me to wine in a very respectful way. He knew I would be going to Spain and there would be wine there. So he didn't want me to just be like wilded out, going crazy. Um, and also because my father, grew up in a segregated South, came to New York and discovered through some mentorship that he had a talent for cooking. And that was at a time when, African American chefs, it was
Yeah.
tough, right? If you talked about what you're cooking, French cuisine, Black
Yeah.
people can do that. So I think from my dad, I got very comfortable saying, look, I'm not going to let arbitrary barriers that you've created stop me from pursuing my passion,
Yeah.
developing my talents. So I would say that trait runs through a lot of people in my family, but given what I do now, I would say my dad was a big influence. And I regret that we don't, have the opportunity to share some wine together now, but
Yeah.
I know he would get a kick out of this,
Oh,
what I'm
absolutely.
doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fabulous.
Thank you.
Like I said, when I told Wanda that when I came up with the name of the show, she was one of the very first people that I thought to invite. Just because, again, I see her as the quintessential boss lady, and so she's told us about how she, did not kind of she just did followed her heart and did the things that spoke to her, instead of doing necessarily doing what other people expected or wanted. And you can do those same things too. So thank you very
Thank
much, Wanda.
you.
I treasure you. I treasure our friendship. I can't wait to see what comes next because I know there's going to be more. I absolutely can't wait for the book because it's going to be amazing.
Thank you.
So, be on the lookout for the book, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I will definitely be promoting it when it comes to be. So, thank you for joining us tonight on Boss Lady Dream Builders. She built it, Boss Lady Chronicles. I got to get used to saying that.
Yes.
She built it, Boss Lady Chronicles. If you have any questions for Wanda, please send them to me. I'm happy to get them to her. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with another guest. Take
Thank
care.
you
Have a
all. It's been
great
an
night.
honor, Sharita. So proud of you, Dr. Gaskins Tillette.
Thank you. All right. Take
Okay.
care. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye bye.